Good morning, and welcome to the Weird and the Wonderful Discussions with Strange Bones. That's me. And yeah, we are carrying on with some very interesting stories, and we've been discussing cryptids. So, particularly cryptids around the world, looking at different cultures, and I thought now it's time to start diving in to things that are a little bit specific, at least, and looking at certain things in certain places to go a little bit deeper and maybe coming up with ideas or reasonings behind such things. Um, and of course, there's no place like home. So we are going to start with South African cryptids. Now, as we know, cryptids are creatures that are somewhat mythical, things that may or may not have magical abilities or at least supernatural powers, and maybe not, we shall see. And we're going to go through them for the South African ones, just for the fun of it. And welcome to Tumalura. Um, good to have you guys with us. So the first South African cryptid that we're going to look at, which is a famous cryptid, as it were, is going to be the Grootslang, which in English literally means a big snake. Um, Unlike most snakes, this one has apparently got elephant-like features and lurks in caves and underground tunnels. Now, it is said in some of the stories to be very dangerous, that it might very possibly want to eat you. We're not sure. But we know for a fact that certainly in Africa, as in many other places around the world, you absolutely do get giant snakes that can be a number of meters long. Of course, here we have the pythons. In the Amazon River, you have the famed anacondas. So giant snakes are certainly real. The Grootslang is, of course, a mythic version thereof, and is ascribed quite a number of powers, including the ability to affect the weather. So perhaps in a country that is in many ways semi-arid and dry, that's something that is a good thing rather than a bad thing. Good morning. Cheers. Welcome to all you guys who are just joining in now. The next important one, which we briefly mentioned the last time, was the Tokolosh, which is a small and ugly dwarf-like figure that is considered to be a mischievous troublemaker, but which apparently brings illness as well. Apparently, it spreads blood around by glands on its bottom. Sounds absolutely delightful. And it's known to come at night and try and get at you while you sleep, which is why many people prefer a bed raised on bricks because it's short, it can't get at you. The next important cryptid for South Africa is the Inkanyamba, which again is a snake, and this is the one which lives in amongst other places in Howick Falls, which has a horse-like head, which maybe it says something about the area because this is absolutely horse country. There's no doubt at all that you certainly will find lots and lots of horse-related things around here. So maybe that's had an influence on it. Horses, of course, are not native to South Africa, so there is no knowledge of horses prior to them being brought here, though we did have the zebra. So maybe we should say that this legendary serpent is actually zebra-headed. Again, very much connected to the ability to bring rain and control thunderstorms. Apparently, if you are good to it, I'm not entirely certain how one is good to the Inkanyamba, it will bring you a great deal of good luck. And that, of course, I think would be a difficult one to achieve. How does one please a mythical snake? I'm not really certain there. If you know more about that one, give me a shout. Let me know. Join me live. Why not? Let's talk about these things. I think it's certainly going to be a lot of fun. Um, the next the next big one is one which is called Malambo, and the interesting thing here is that this is the South African version of a mermaid. It is described as female, which fits in with the mermaid mythos, and is apparently incredibly seductive. And if treated well or correctly, can bring huge wealth to you. It is a water spirit, of course, but if not treated right, there is an excellent chance that she will absolutely ruin you. So definitely, as in all South African cryptids, you've got to be very, very careful about how you go about dealing with them. And this is across the board. Um, Certainly, you have to approach with a great deal of care and a great deal of circumspection, shall we say. So, definitely want to be careful of. And then the last major cryptid that is spoken of in South Africa is the Waterbobiaan, or the um, water baboon, known as Fudu. Um, Basically, it is a baboon, but an extremely large one, which again, just like your Yetis or your Bigfoot, it's something which is absolutely uh, very possible. I imagine that the chance of there being larger versions of an animal is very good, without a doubt. So the idea of a very large baboon is not out of the ordinary, though this one is said to be, like all baboons, particularly aggressive, um, will steal and destroy crops, and if encountered, could certainly harm you. Couple of little details about some of them is that size certainly plays a role. The Grootslang, for example, is said to be up to 50 or 60 feet long, which is quite a hell of a size for a snake. Certainly would be big enough to eat a person. But then we know for a fact that there are very large pythons that can eat people, and certainly the anacondas are well big enough to eat people. So there's no doubt that in terms of that sort of thing, the the cryptids are of the right size and nastiness that they could do a great deal of harm. But we have the ordinary versions, which are quite possibly just as bad. Um, so it's a relatively shorter list in the South African commonly believed in cryptids. There are a few others in smaller areas, but not too many. Not too many. we know, of course, that there are, shall we say, semi-creatures? Yes, I think that would be the word, which are strongly related to witchcraft, which aren't considered to be proper cryptids per se, but rather to be a form of witch, as we know in Zulu tradition at least, and I believe it is mirrored in several of the other cultures found in South Africa. You get varying varieties of witch. The most basic is the herbalist in Nyanga, which is known to be well, I suppose you can say the expert in physical healing, which is very common and considered to be a very important part of society. So they're considered to be good guys. They can cure quite a lot of uh, ailments, both physical and spiritual. Uh, then, of course, you get the Isangoma, which is largely considered to be a diviner, but you can consider them to be a witch that deals with more of the spiritual aspects than the Inyanga would, and are very often the ones tasked with dealing with the ancestors, the Amadlosi. So there's a lot of respect and status for these both. The third version of which is very often unknown by most, not spoken of much. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but certainly within the culture is highly respected, and that would be the blacksmith, who would have a number of special um, powers, both related to smithing and often in other ways. In many cultures, the blacksmith is considered to be a sorcerer of a kind. However, you then get the fourth variety, and the fourth variety is Abatagati. They are the evil version, and they are absolutely considered to be a group that is rejected by society, that should never be allowed, and in many cases, if caught, would be killed. They're considered to be just evil, and it's these ones that often are connected with the nastier forms of cryptids, such as those with the ability to transform into the Weir hyena. Um, they're also said to have powers that connect to controlling animals that can be then sent in to wreak havoc and do terrible things in uh, communities. Their power is said to be quite extensive, but it seems that it's generally agreed that they don't get their abilities like a proper Sangoma or Inyanga via the ancestors, who of course are the legitimate spiritual link between earth and God, um, as part of the Zulu culture. But they get their powers from evil spirits, and that I think is the big connection that they have with the cryptids, particularly the Tokolos, who is said to work with them and often act as a kind of servant to the Abatagati. So we absolutely do have a whole selection of quite nasty creatures. It is an interesting thing that um, we don't have in South African traditions much in the way of undead, and I find that to be a very interesting fact. But it may relate to the fact that we have a strong belief in the dead, uh, and they are considered to be still living in a sense, and still a part of society. So perhaps the strong ties that are had with the ancestors precludes them being forced back as a kind of living dead, at least in South Africa. Um, we don't have much in the way of liches or risen dead or anything like that. There are occasions where you will get angry ancestors. That's absolutely true. And there are occasions where, if somebody is particularly bad, when they die, they are not allowed to become an ancestor because of their sins in life. And they become instead a kind of evil spirit, which might be an equivalent, I suppose, but there are no zombies, for example, as do come up in a number of other African cultures around the world, but not in South Africa at least. So no zombies here, which perhaps is a good thing. Now, moving on with the South African supernatural theme, I'm going to add in there, hey guys, welcome, welcome. Hey Kevy, hey Siska. Let's have a look at some of the really famous South African ghosts, because now ghosts seem to be the thing that we all agree must be real. We tend to be very dubious about a lot of the other cryptids, and I certainly can't argue with that. But in terms of ghosts, we seem to have a lot of them and be quite happy about them. And of course, we cannot talk ghosts in South Africa without talking about the most famous ghost of all. South Africa, of course, is a country with a great deal of connection to sailing in the sea, and the Flying Dutchman is an absolute legend that is a South African legend. And for whatever strange reason that there is in this specific case, this particular boat is cursed to sail endlessly around the Cape of Good Hope. Now, for those of you who are not South African or perhaps don't know, calling it the Cape of Good Hope is not an original name. The original name was the Cape of Storms. And while Cape Town did become a place of good hope, initially it was considered to be a very dangerous place to try and land. It still very much is, though boats are far better these days instead of being the old wooden variety. That really did struggle at the time. So the Cape of Storms was incredibly violent for ships, and the Flying Dutchman was one of the many, many casualties. Only this one still sails. So yes, we absolutely do have some famous ghosts in terms of ships that I think is a wonderful sort of maritime addition that is true to South Africa and fits to our sort of history. It's quite a wonderful thing. Another interesting one is the ghost of Governor van Noort, which haunts Cape Town Castle. Now, according to legend, this was the governor of Cape Town Castle at a time, and he was a particularly nasty bastard who was known to, in fact, execute soldiers if they were not quick enough or obedient enough. And after his death, his spirit was cursed to haunt the castle. And there are those who say they've seen him walking the varying halls. An interesting one if you're in Cape Town. Another good one is the Lord Milner Hotel in Maatjiesfontein. It's a hotel that has not one but several ghosts. It's one of the most haunted locations in the country, and it has amongst its spirits the ghost of Kate, a Boer nurse, and a poltergeist by the name of Lucy. Again, the word poltergeist comes from the German and means a noisy or violent spirit. And of course, what that means is that poltergeists, unlike most ghosts who just sort of hang around and can be seen, are ghosts that actually do things, which of course puts them in a slightly different supernatural category. We also have the Tokai Manor House, where there is a young man and his horse, which is a very interesting combination. Um, having a ghostly animal along with a man is not uncommon, but certainly not usual. And apparently, if you stay at the Tokai Manor House, you will see him riding around. You also have the Afrikaner Library in Kimberley, where librarians that work there have said that if you ask nicely, um, ghostly hands will knock books off shelves if asked. So apparently there are ghosts that are there and will respond to interaction, but otherwise are not nasty. In Rustenvrucht, you have in this historical Cape Town home, there are several apparitions and often footsteps are heard wandering up and down. You have the famous ghost house in Rondebosch, where lots of different ghosts are said to be. I find it interesting that most places, if you have a ghost, it's generally one, unless it's a really old castle. But it seems that in South Africa, we pack in a good load of suitable spiritual activity in one place. I mean, if you're going to do it right, eh? Um, hey there to ACR and to Meow and Zari 4K. Awesome to have you join us, and absolutely make sure that you like, subscribe, stick around. We'll keep bringing in content, and do us the favor of sending in a comment so we can respond to it, or join us live. Why not? It would be great if you did. Okay, the next one, which is one I've heard of many times, a very famous one, is the Grey Lady from Cape Town Castle. There's a collapsed tunnel that goes between the castle and the government house, and you can't actually get through it anymore. But of course, being a ghost, the Grey Lady can and has often been seen walking up and down along it. And then, of course, the Kimberley Country House, which is haunted by a young boy who is something of a poltergeist. He likes to stamp his feet and throw things around. And then, last but not least of the famous ones, we have the Uniondale Hitchhiker, which we have gone into before, which is absolutely, to me at least, the most famous of the ghosts in South Africa, which is the hitchhiker that I've actually known people who have picked her up unknowingly and thereafter found that while barreling down the freeway at high speed. She's disappeared from the back of the car, and they only realized then that it was a ghost. So, absolutely, we got quite a few great ghosts in this country alongside our cryptids. And I think that as a country, we can be quite satisfied in the amount of cryptids that we have. Um, what I find very interesting as well is that while the cryptids tend to be cultural, many cheers. Coffee is awesome. Um, cryptids tend to be a cultural thing, especially in South Africa, and it's given that we have so many cultures in South Africa. We're a very rich culture, which is wonderful. Um, it means that you have a lot of different specific sort of cryptids that some will hold do exist and some will not. Though on occasion there are times when somebody from a culture that doesn't believe in that cryptid sees something that seems very much like that kind of cryptid, which I find very interesting. Um, as I said in the last live, there was absolutely a time when I saw something which seemed very strongly to be just like a tokolosh. Was it? I don't know for certain, but perhaps. Um, but it seems that the ghosts are seen by everybody and regardless. So we have a lot of ghosts. We also have a lot of battlefields and places around where certainly there's been enough tragedy to make ghosts. Um, we know for a fact that the roads in this country are not great, and we have a lot of accidents that do happen. Um, so, without a doubt, we have enough opportunity, can we say, to start a ghostly situation without any doubt at all. So, certainly check out the highways and the hospitals, and you will almost certainly see a ghost. Now, another one which I can confirm. Uh, I worked for a while in Gray's Hospital, and there's certain parts of the hospital that are absolutely said to be haunted. Um, different stories and different things. Um, it is said that you should never go down to the morgue at night. I got to be honest with you that um, I'm not sure I would want to go down to the morgue at night, haunted or not. Let's be fair on this. It's absolutely not what I would consider to be a fun spot to drop off in. However, um, having it haunted makes sense, but I was working at the time in the capacity of um, a counselor doing my practicals for psychology, and I was working in the terminal ward. And it absolutely is said to be haunted. And usually at night, you can hear or see people walking around that have died there a long time before. But I was there only during the day. And I remember I stopped off at one of the beds right at the end of um, a larger section, and I had a little chat with a very nice old lady who seemed very pleasant. I wasn't there long, few minutes, um, and then wandered on. And as I came out, one of the nurses said to me in a very sympathetic sort of way, says, "I don't blame you ducking into a corner for a bit of a rest. It does get very intense talking to all these people and knowing that, it is a terminal ward. And as she was saying that, she was tidying, she drew back the curtain that separated the bed that the old lady was in that I had just been chatting to. And of course, as she pulled back the curtain, it became obvious the bed was entirely empty. So I didn't say anything because, after all, what do you say? And I ducked out and went and found somebody else to talk to. But yep, absolutely, it does appear to be haunted at least by one ghost that I myself saw. So I don't know. I do know that my colleague at the time was also doing uh, his practicals for psychology there, and he was in the neonatal ward, and he said it was an absolutely wonderful experience. He had never been in a happier place ever, and he certainly never saw anything strange, which makes sense given that he was in the neonatal ward. Uh, but it does show perhaps that uh, you've got to have the sad things for ghosts to appear. So I didn't go into the morgue myself more than once, specifically because, well, it's a morgue. Why would I want to? But I can tell you that while I didn't necessarily see anything in there that was supernatural, it was very, very packed. Their morgue is always stacked 2 or 3 bodies high. Um, it's a major hospital and it is always hugely, hugely busy. And it was certainly creepy as hell. And whether it was just the creep factor or something more, I don't know. But I can tell you there is a very strange feeling around the Grace Hospital morgue. Uh, but then it is absolutely a place where you see the most damnedest things. I remember I came late for my work there the one day, and I took a shortcut in through the emergency entrance, where you have a lot of patients that come in need of emergency and specialist assistance. And as I came in, there was a chap sitting playing drafts with a couple of other guys and chatting, who had a machete in his head. It was still in there, he was waiting to be seen by a doctor. Another guy had a belt tied around his leg because the lower half was chopped off. How, I don't know, but certainly it was a very busy hospital, and you saw a lot of quite terrifying things. And these were just guys waiting in the queue. So who knows? Uh, if anything would become a ghost, I can absolutely guarantee you Grace Hospital is right up there at the top of a good spot to go and check out for ghosts. But busy, busy, busy. There's enough horror to go around. Mm. Now, in terms of ghosts, I can absolutely tell you um, there is no doubt at all. Every little town has got stories, um, and I doubt I could find 2 people that don't have some tale of something strange and mysterious that they have encountered at some stage in their lives. We have several battlefields around the country, especially in Natal, um, where very large and quite bloody battles did occur, and plenty of ghosts that turn up there. We have, for those who want the more modern variety of ghosts, we have ghostly cars. There are a couple of places around that I've heard of where um, people have encountered cars that uh, appeared and then disappeared as they were driving down the road. There are places, Durban North, where apparently there are people that appear in the road at the last minute, and I know of somebody who said that he hit this guy that was standing in the road, and as he hit them, they simply disappeared. They were not there at all, and he found out afterwards that it was in fact a ghost. That's what they do. They stand in the road and make an attempt to terrify the drivers into swerving and possibly having an accident. He saw it, but too late, and therefore ran into it. But yeah, there is absolutely a whole selection of ghosts that you can encounter that will truly terrify you. Wondering now that I think it, and seeing a comment that just came up, where is the most haunted place? I'm wondering about that. I'm going to say that the most haunted place is probably going to be one of the main roads. And if nothing else, I'm going to pick probably the road on which the Uniondale ghost is found. Probably because it is a fairly bad road. As roads go, it's definitely one that has seen more than its fair share of terrifying accidents. But let me give you a selection, and you can tell me which one you think counts. The first of all is the N2 highway going into Durban, which absolutely it's had plenty. It's absolutely had plenty of accidents. There's the ghost of a woman that was killed in a car accident on the road, which still walks the road at night, wearing a white dress and carrying a handbag. Sometimes she's only visible in the rearview mirror. Others have claimed that they have given her a lift, only to have her disappear as they are reaching their destination. There have been reports of unexplained accidents and weird things causing accidents on this road, so it's definitely a contender. The next one would be the Voortrekker Road in Cape Town, which is known for its haunted bridge, which is a very interesting one. There was a very tragic accident that claimed the lives of several people on the bridge, and the spirits of the deceased are still seen wandering around the bridge. Drivers have reported seeing apparitions on the road at night, and some have reported hearing screams and cries for help from the bridge. They are said to be active pretty much around the year, but mostly on the anniversary of the accident. So there is that. The other one, of course, is our favorite for Uniondale, which is the R33 between Greytown and Dundee. And I can tell you that I've driven this road many times, and it is absolutely a road with good curves, let's say, which can be difficult. And besides the famous Uniondale hitchhiker, there is the phantom biker who died in a crash on the road, and the biker's spirit still rides the road, and drivers have reported seeing him speeding towards them only to disappear just before hitting them. Some say you can feel the chill and the sense of dread as his ghost rides through your car. So yeah, uh, absolutely famous. we have, of course, also on this road not just the famous Uniondale ghost herself, but there was a family that also died in a car accident in the 1960s there that are sometimes seen walking along the road and sometimes moving away from a car crash screaming for help. Some say they have heard the crash happen. How true is that? I don't know, but absolutely massively haunted road with plenty of reasons to be haunted. So a fine choice. Then, of course, you have the old Johannesburg Road. And again, this is a road I have driven. It's in Pretoria. And this one is interesting because those that are haunting it aren't modern ghosts by any means, but rather they are the soldiers that died in a battle there during the Anglo-Boer War, and these soldiers are still seen marching along the road at night, and drivers have reported hearing the sounds of marching boots and then only seeing the marching soldiers in their rear view mirror. Maybe there's something to be said about that. Maybe if you want to see a ghost, you need to look for it in a mirror. But then again, there's enough warnings in world mythology that you don't want to do that with a mirror, because then it can come through or take you through. So, um, apparently, it causes huge amounts of sadness for no reason in some people driving the road. So, yeah, hard one to say which is the worst of all. Um, But I would choose the R33 as being the most haunted road. We certainly do have many, many haunted places as well. I mean, there's the famous Hilton Hotel, where we've even had people who are what's the uh, correct term? Ghost hunter, um, I suppose, is the correct one. Uh, from America who've come to check it out and see what's what there. Um, Up and down the Dargle, there are old manor houses that are haunted. Um, Quite a few of the old farms in the Midlands area are the original farms from way, way back when, hundreds of years old. And the original houses, while they may have been upgraded a little, are still lived in. And many of the people that live in said places will tell you straight off they are haunted. And many of them quite in a matter of fact way. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know there's a ghost that walks around in that room, but we just use it for storage, so we don't mind, and they're not a problem." So people can be quite, shall we say, matter of fact about the hauntings in this area. But the Midlands have a lot, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that back in the day, most of, shall we say, the country wasn't well lived in a concentrated way. You tended to have the majority of people in clusters in the major cities. Um, Obviously, the Johannesburg area for the mines, you had Cape Town, and you had Durban, and it was much smaller settlements between. So you had a great deal of travel up and down through these areas, and the Midlands area was the main route through from Durban to Johannesburg. Um, and there were several post routes that went through here and similar sort of a setup. And even today, it's a very open sort of land with huge farms. It's a farming area more than anything. Um, so travel through was important. And I think in that sense, the old houses have stuck around um, simply because they were what people went by and stopped over at, and therefore we've got many years of people living and dying in what was quite a dangerous land um, for a long time, with all kinds of risks from animals and more, and the difficulties of crossing the mountains. Um, so plenty of opportunities for ghosts to rise up and exist, especially in the Midlands, and we have them today. So good stuff there. Um, yeah, I think that about covers most of the cryptids and the ghosts for South Africa. And from there, let's take a little short view of witchcraft in the modern age. Um, is it a big thing in South Africa? Generally, no. Um, it is in several of the black communities that still follow the traditional beliefs, especially in the white communities. I would say that by and large, religion is a very strong thing. It's a very big deal. So, for most places, no, you won't get a lot in the way of uh, modern witches or following any of the modern type uh, pagan religions in this country, except in certain areas where you have what I can loosely say more of a hippie outlook. So there is a fairly strong pagan community in the Cape and in Natal, but very little in the more Afrikaans areas, simply because it goes against the sort of community culture and views. There is a very strong Christian culture in those areas, and you would literally be looked on as pretty much evil, and that's it if you chose to follow any pagan religion at all. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to say that no, not in those areas. But the Midlands, which is a very hippie area in many ways and has a very relaxed view, which is typical of Natal, about life, the universe, and everything. I've, to be honest, it's the place where the best weed in the world comes from, which maybe tells you something about the outlook and views. I mean, Natal Green, or Durban Poison, as it's sometimes called, is absolutely famous as being among the strongest and the top weed you can get. So maybe that affects the more spiritual connection that is had. um, but there's a wonderful, relaxed vibe in the Midlands, and the Midlands is known to produce some of the absolute best musicians as well. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to live, and full of artists of the most fantastic quality. But as well with that, we do have quite a strong pagan community, and there is quite a big group of Wiccans and other kinds of witches, and it is said, and how true this is very hard to establish because of the secrecy around, but it is said that the biggest South African satanic group comes from this area as well. So maybe that tells you something. I don't know. But yeah, so we have a lot of the supernatural and paranormal and those that believe in it and follow it regardless of. So we absolutely have to say that we've got that kind of thing going for us here. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Tell me more. Tell me more. Come on, guys. Join in with us. Like, subscribe. Join this channel whenever we do lives. Go and watch the shorts when I put them up. I know I've been a bit tardy of late, but I've been sick as a dog. But also send in your comments, questions, and I will do my best to find out what can be found out about something. And bring it up in the chat. And again, if you would like to, ask and join in on the live so that we can chat about your own experiences and what you think may or may not be real. And we're going to start moving from this country onto some other countries and looking at the specific area type cryptids and comparing them as well. Um, Certain of them are well known by a lot of people, mostly through movies and popular media, but some are far less known. Um, I mean, everybody knows what a vampire is, but they are actually a pretty small part of the cryptid community, as it were. Um, but they got famous, and I suppose uh, they became a favorite because of their dark passion, etc., etc. Um, but there are, I would almost say, better cryptids out there that you can find far more interesting and certainly far more weird. So we have no lack of good ones to talk about and find out about, and we are going to do just that as we go along, um, and see what we can see. Um, but please do tell me if there's any specific ones that you want. I would love to hear your comments. Um, And if you've seen something, please do tell us about it. As I say, in terms of ghosts, I've seen plenty around the country. I have been to the famous Kempton Hospital. I have been to several haunted hotels around. I've been to the Hilton Hotel. So absolutely, ghosts, not a problem. There are several haunted places in Pietermaritzburg where absolutely I have indeed seen some strange things. Um, my trips to Cape Town, I must be honest, have always been short and busy, and I've never had a chance to go and check out any of the haunted places there. But I've absolutely seen several haunted places up and down from Durban to Johannesburg. So plenty there. And of course, being a Natal boy, I've been to quite a few of the battlefields up and around in um, KwaZulu Natal. And there's been some funky things out there. No doubt about that at all. Um, I will say, though, that the scariest thing I ever saw in this country was actually when I was up on the border, and we are in a very old, it was a military base, but not one that was used. It was a sort of a way station type base that um, it was mostly now not bothered with at all when I was there, but they would leave a couple of guards there anyway just to look after it. but it wasn't in use. It had gone through use as a proper base. Then it was a training center for the dog unit, and then it was used for storage and things. But then it became pretty much defunct. But I was one of the lucky fellows to do the guarding there. And at a time, apparently, there had been some conflict at it, um, but no longer. But when I was there, I did get to witness a red-eyed shadow um, that came out of the dark and started following following me around when I knew that there was no more than four of us there in their entirety, and the other three were all in bed. So I actually, uh, because I'm a bit stupid like that, I'm pretty much going to tell you, I accosted this thing. I was armed at the time, so I figured, hey, if it's an animal, I'll shoot the damn thing, and if it's not, well, let's find out. So I accosted it, and it fled from me, which was interesting, but it ran away through a brick wall, which kind of indicated that perhaps it was less physical than you might imagine. And at that point, I realized that I was largely at the end of my shift, and I very quickly hurried back to the tent where the others were and gratefully sent one of the other guys off on his march around, and kept very quiet and stayed very near the other people because, well, I might be stupid, but nobody said I was brave. So that was definitely one of the creepier of the things I've ever seen, being followed by something strange and ghostly. Uh, Definitely puts you into a different frame of mind. Uh, and I'm not the only one who saw that thing there. Uh, I met a couple of other people that said they also saw it. Um, One claimed that it called his name, which I don't think in any manner or form is a good thing. How did it know his name? Why did it know his name? Um, couldn't tell you that, but definitely a moment of severe concern in that regard. So, yeah, we have a lot of ghosts, we have a lot of cryptids. Could that have been a ghost? I'm not sure. We also have a number of poltergeists and violent ghosts, and areas where there are things. So, absolutely, South Africa, a place for plenty of the paranormal. But where shall we go next? I will come up with something suitable, but if you have a particular country or area you would like covered, send me the message. Let me know. Tell me what you think you would like to hear about, and we will try to find more. Um, I'm thinking that I would like to possibly go to somewhere out of Africa for the next one so that we can have some contrast. Absolutely. I think that would be a good idea just to keep things fresh and interesting. And we will look at the ghosts and cryptids of that place. I'm vaguely debating the possibility of somewhere in America, possibly South America. I'm sure that there are legends of plenty of Mayan and Aztec cryptids that are going to be interesting to look at. Um, though I warn you now and in advance, I will almost absolutely certainly butcher any native words. So we will put out a worldwide apology from the start, just to begin with, that uh, it is not my culture, and I cannot speak any of those languages from that side, so let's have it said. But I think it will be a very interesting place to check out. Um, but nevertheless, I think we've covered the main and important things. that we can count as South African. I do know that if you look around the coast of South Africa, you will absolutely find um, a lot of shipwrecks. The waters around the the tip of South Africa, especially given the fact that you have the meeting of two oceans, which are vastly different in temperature, um, has a major effect on that. There's literally a place in the Cape where you can swim from one ocean to the other and actually feel the difference in temperature. So we're a weird country. We are also possibly the only country in the entire world that has multiple biomes. If you're wondering what a biome is, basically it's um, the profile of the the weather and landscape. So you, if you have a desert biome, it's arid, little water, usually rocky or sandy type environment with not a lot of plant growth. That would be a biome. You could have a jungle biome where it's very sort of hot and wet and densely covered in jungle. That's a jungle biome. Well, South Africa has nearly all varieties of biome somewhere in it, which makes it absolutely unique in the world, without a doubt. Um, so we're a weird country just in its landscape. So the fact that we've got a ton of the paranormal and supernatural going on as well is almost de rigueur. It's like we couldn't not have it. Um, I think it would be fair to say that it's practically expected of us to have it. We have coelacanths living off the coast, which absolutely are a living cryptid in many, many, many ways. So, no surprise at all in any of that kind of way. I think that we have sufficiency of strangeness. Cheers again, the old throat's not doing great, so got to keep the coffee going in. So yeah, we have enough weirdness. We have things that are weird, shall we call it, on specific areas. Um, there are said to be ghosts going up the mountain at Table Mountain. There are said to be quite a few ghosts going up the mountains into the famous Dragon Mountains. I think many of us almost forget that the Drakensberg is in fact the Dragon Mountains, and they are mysterious in their own right. Um, we have a very strange connection uh, from the lower, very warm coastline going so steeply up into the mountains to the very cold areas right up top, and then onto the plateau beyond, which is terribly dry and flat, but at a very, very high level. Um, being over 1,000 feet in South Africa is pretty normal. Somebody was telling me that one of the reasons that some of the best swimmers in the world come from the Orange Free State is because parts of the Free State are so high that they actually have a 2 to 3% larger lung capacity that has just naturally grown into people from being there. And so they're able to breathe better and therefore swim better. Um, so, yeah, we have a very weird country. Um, and with our massive death toll on the roads, plenty of places where you can get lots and lots of ghosts, and it probably gets pretty crowded out here. And you add in some of these strange and ancient tales from the original inhabitants of this land, which are, of course, the Khoikhoi, the San, and the two, I forget their names every time. There were four tribes that sort of fall under the 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 banner of the Morota, which is a tribal grouping that no longer exists, as the tribe was broken up, varied reasons in the past. I believe the Pedi are now the descendants of the Morota, along with the Khoikhoi and the San, which now are known as the Khoisan. They're originally separate tribes. And of course, they have stories and legends that tell of some very interesting ancient creatures and things that's supposed to have existed out here. And along with that, you actually will find that we have some amazing creatures just as normal. I mean, elephants, with all the mythology that surrounds elephants, is amazing. Hey there, Solani. We've been discussing cryptids and ghosts, and specifically those in South Africa. We're going to jump around to a couple of places if we can, to talk about different ones around the world, but absolutely the ghosts and cryptids of South Africa. I don't know if you've ever encountered anything strange and weird. Um, give us your opinion. Give us any of your stories, or join me live and let's have a chat about them, because we have a lot of stories. Of course, we've touched on the most known ghosts like the Uniondale hauntings and such, and the Flying Dutchman, and of course the famous cryptids such as the Grootslang and the Tokolosj, and several others. So we have quite a few on hand, if you want, that can be found. And of course, in the Drakensberg themselves, there are tales of not only the great baboon, which is apparently a giant-sized baboon up there. Suppose you might say South Africa's equivalent of the Bigfoot, I suppose, and why not? But we also have a number of tales of somewhat ghostly, certainly magical, black-maned lions, which also you get out on the plains above as well in the Platteland, which are said to be able to appear and disappear, and which are very fond of eating people. So certainly a good collection of very specific stories as well, in that regard. But yeah, I think we've covered all of the good things thus far. We've gone over all the important ones. Do send me a message and let me know if there's any specific area you would like looked at and researched. I will do that research and bring it up uh, in the next comments. I absolutely do think I'm going to probably head to somewhere in the Americas if I can, and we will take all of that from there. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for being a part of what has been a wonderful chat. I've certainly enjoyed myself. We've been at this for over an hour now, so we certainly do want to wrap things up for the day. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you will come back again tomorrow. So you guys have a truly wonderful, wonderful day. Remember to like, subscribe, join in, and show your love and support, and we will take all things from there. Have an awesome one, and be good to yourselves. Cheers, cheers.